like to welcome you today to the Secret to Effectively Positioning Any B2B Brand. This is one in a series of our short webinars where we address B2B topics. And I'm Mary Abazia with Impact Planning Group, and joining me today is my business partner, Tom Spitali, and our newest associate, Pete Boland. So as we work with great companies around the world, we hear, can you really position B2B, business-to-business brands as compelling as you can with consumer brands? So Tom is going to take us through what are human truths, and then Tom and Pete are going to really help us understand why it's relevant when positioning B2B brands. And there are benefits both internally and externally. And then Pete will help us understand how can you and other B2B brands apply this approach to your organization. So we will address other questions at the end of this, but Tom, if you can first help us understand human truth.
Thanks, Mary. The image of a B2B buyer as unemotional and almost machine-like in their decision-making, only caring about price and functionality and nothing emotional at all, is really a dangerous image, because many B2B marketers use that to create very functional positioning strategies, marketing strategies, and marketing communications of the kind that you see on my screen right here. Now, these types of appeals to customers don't make much of an impression on the B2B buyer's mind because they sound like everyone else's. But even worse, in a technological age, when you make these kinds of functional positioning claims, it's just a matter of time, and that time is getting shorter and shorter, before a new technology or competitor bests your power-to-cost ratio or figures out a way to deliver in a more timely manner than you're able to do. But the advice to just move up the ladder with your positioning and marketing communications and your strategies, going beyond attributes or beyond the rational benefits that we just talked about, and to customer values, has admittedly been really, really hard for many B2Bs, especially heavy industrial B2Bs, to execute on in a meaningful way. Finding these motives and address these motives that buyers have and addressing them in a meaningful way has been difficult, and usually ends in some platitude approach like, we give you peace of mind or we help you sleep at night. And those aren't very powerful values-based messages. But the good news is that there's a new approach that's helping to light the path for B2B marketers and enabling them to leverage emotional-based, values-based positioning in a more meaningful and powerful way. It's called human truth-based positioning. Now, the definition of a human truth is that it is a resonating reality about love or power or evolution or achievement or happiness that is truly felt in the mind or psyche of customers in a particular target market, and that no one else in the industry is currently leveraging. By uncovering these human truths and then matching them up to a unique aspect of your company's history or heritage or capabilities is proving to be a powerful way, an effective way for B2Bs to use emotionally based positioning statements that resonate with their customer base. And you don't even have to take our word for it. We studied the top global B2B leaders and examined their positioning statements and whether they were human truth backed or not, and whether they were emotional or not. An excerpt of that study is on my screen right now, and you can see the full study in our blog or in an article I published on LinkedIn Pulse. But the fact of the matter is, it's not just some of the global leaders in B2B marketing and B2B business that have emotional taglines and human truths that back them. It's all of them. And what's even more important, as we study the companies that are chasing them, most or all of them have rational or functional based messages. We truly believe that we've uncovered a secret that B2B leaders do differently, and that everybody that's chasing them can utilize to get better at more values-based and emotional-based marketing in B2B spaces. Let's look at a couple of examples. on how this plays out in B2B. Have you seen GE's recent advertising where the young man with programming and technology skills, much to the chagrin of his friends and colleagues, is not taking those skills to a sexy consumer business, but is taking those to the heavy industrial markets of GE? The purpose of this advertising, this messaging of imagination at work at GE, is to connect emotionally with its target market, people in these heavy industrial markets who feel underrated and know that they have as much potential, if not more, to change the world than people in the sexy consumer businesses. And GE's heritage and culture of innovation points them out as a powerful partner in this endeavor. Or maybe let's look at IBM's A Smarter Planet and the human truth that backs that. Or better yet, let's look at one of IBM's competitors in the software business. Many of IBM's software competitors believe that their functionality is better than IBM's, but they stick to functionally based messaging because of the following fallacious thinking. It works like this. See if this kind of thinking exists at your company. They say, our functionality, our superior functionality leads to better profitability or cost effectiveness for our clients. Their companies do better. That reflects nicely on the careers of our clients. And our clients' careers are emotional. So talking about our superior functionality is really, through the back door, an emotional message for our clients. But compare that functional message with what IBM can talk about in its Marcoms, with this Smarter Planet positioning and this human truth that backs it that's listed on this slide. IBM could say things like, it's an exciting time we live in with technology having the potential to totally change industries and outcomes. Improving the world we live in is a focus that IBM has in common with many of our clients. Can we talk about how our private products are delivering on this vision for our customers? You got one B2B talking about software functionality, hoping it's emotion. You've got another company talking about how their clients can be a part of building Earth's legacy. That's how powerful human truth-based positionings can be. And the good news is that there is a methodology, there's a path. It's a relatively new way of thinking, so there's a lot of open territory for B2Bs to figure out how to uncover these human truths and match them up with their company's unique capabilities and build emotional values-based positioning that's really effective in B2B markets. And Pete Boland is here to talk about how he has had direct experience in using these approaches. Pete was at Charles Schwab, and it's important to note that Schwab has a very important customer constituency called institutional investors. So what you're about to hear is as much a B2B story as it is a B2C story. But Pete, using human truth-based positioning and strategies, was able to take Schwab from a leader to a laggard in just 5 short years. This is the story of how Pete did it. So without any further ado, take it away, Pete.
Hey, thanks, Tom. Hi, everybody. So as Tom says, I'll spend the next 10 minutes sharing what's essentially a real example of how a B2B to C brand, which is Charles Schwab, was able to connect emotionally with customers. And the heart of that was about finding a human truth that the brand could associate with and then play that out, bring that to life for both B2B and B2C. So I think it's really important to say at the outset that I know I'm talking about Charles Schwab here, but the process we followed is very doable for brands of all sizes and budgets. I think it doesn't involve long, complex, or expensive research. It doesn't involve huge advertising campaigns. I think that's a thing of the past for most brands today. I think it was more about really actively listening to customers and really spending time to get to know your customers and using that insight to build your brand. What's also worth noting at the outset is that the cost of brand storytelling, which is often where you can make that emotional hook once you've established that positioning, the cost of doing that is now it's really a fraction of where it used to be when I started out in the business. You can make great, compelling video content for thousands rather than hundreds of thousands of dollars in the way that it used to be. So this first slide that you can see now, it just illustrates that that big leap in brand strength for Charles Schwab, it came about through transforming the positioning from a really what was a purely product and price sort of stance to a positioning based, as Tom was talking about, on a fundamental human truth. And I think what also we did was that human truth recaptured some of the elements that made the brand, the Charles Schwab brand, very much the game changer that it was back in the 1970s. I bet a lot of you remember Charles Schwab's iconic Talk to Chuck campaign. It was hugely successful in its day, but like all long-running campaigns, they at some point they run out of gas, or they simply just get passed by as the world evolves around them. And that was the case with Schwab. And by 2011, to be honest, the brand was flatlining from both a brand and a business point of view. And I was really fortunate to arrive at Schwab at that time. Sometimes these things work, timing works in life. And I was able to lead the turnaround back to leadership. And we did that by re-energizing the brand, by going back to those fundamentals, the brand values and beliefs that have been somewhat forgotten over the years. And at the same time, we listened really hard to key customer segments in both B2B and B2C, half their businesses B2B, to understand these customers' journey in life and key insights about what motivate them. And in doing so, we were able to uncover what we call human truth, those things, as Tom said, that drive us, all of us as human beings, the drive to succeed, the drive to protect our family, to defend our space, to evolve and grow, and so on. But for us, the most interesting human truth is around how investing helps people seize their destiny and their purpose in life, which we thought was super interesting. Great foundation upon which to build a stronger, more emotionally rooted positioning for Charles Schwab, which we called Only Tomorrow. And also it inspired very clear ideas about how to bring that positioning to life. And Tom alluded to this. Not only did this new human truth-based positioning take the brand from last to first place, you can see that shift in the brand asset valuator there. Over the same period, revenue increased by 50%, and net income actually doubled. Okay, the next slide I'm going to spend a minute on. It just shows the ton of different ways we're able to bring Only Your Tomorrow, which is the campaign, to life for both B2B and B2C audiences in a ton of different ways, and these are just some examples. I think really importantly, and again, Tom alluded to this earlier on, that because it worked in some ways because the Only Your Tomorrow idea felt so real to employees as well, and in doing that, it inspired customer innovation, new products, and hundreds of ideas about how to bring it to life. It really energized employees and became a bit of a rallying cry for the people internally, which is really important. Okay, so the approach we followed in building Only Your Tomorrow is what we call the brand accelerator process. So let's talk about that. And before we get to the actual steps of the process itself, let me talk to, I think, 4 principles that underlie it. I don't know, Tom, if you can. That's right. Thank you. Firstly, is that notion of finding commonality between a brand's values and beliefs, and then how your key customers segments think. And if you can find that intersection, it's a really powerful place to position your brand. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we did that. Secondly, the notion of human truth. If you can associate a brand with an underlying human truth, that gives it real resonance and depth and engagement, and just takes you into a different sort of stratosphere. Like, I love the G's eco-imagination, what they've done, how they developed that over the years, and that's all about the human truth behind it. Thirdly, I think this personally, I think it's always critical to be really clear on your understanding of the role that your brand actually plays in the lives of your customers. What does it ultimately actually do for them? And I love Tom's point about, hey, it could be about being successful through your product or your service can build their careers, make them feel successful, give them a sense of achievement. So it's sort of unticking that, if you like. And then, ensuring delivery of the brand positioning carried out in an inspiring, imaginative, engaging way across the entire customer experience. And that, of course, is a lot easier to do if you base your positioning on a human truth. Okay, next slide. Let's go through the brand accelerator process itself, and there are essentially 3 phases to this. So starting on the left, it's identifying the insight and human truths in your category. So this means asking those fundamental questions: why your brand exists and for whom. And the challenger brand guys call this intelligent naivety, really going back to that core understanding of why did your brand even exist in the first place? Sometimes the founder's original thinking is still obvious, or you can sometimes reverse engineer that to come to some conclusions on what the brand on the values the brand operates with. At Schwab, Chuck Schwab was still around. He was very clear about the values of the brand, and it was quite clear internally, but nobody outside the company had a clue. But that was the first place to start. And I think one of the first questions I always ask on any new brand I've worked on a bunch, is that question of who loves our brand? Who are the people that actually love our brand and why? And with a bit of reverse engineering there, you can start to identify values and beliefs that customers perceive, these customers perceive your brand projects. So at the same time as you're doing that internal exploration about what are the values and beliefs of our own company, you want to get inside the heads of your target audience to crack the code, as I put it, on what motivates them. And this is where you're looking for that human truth, looking to find what ultimately motivates people. And it's not as difficult as it might sound. You don't have to bring in a big research organization or spend a ton of money. Basically, what we did it by bringing customers together for a series of facilitated collaborative workshops around the country. And I know that sounds like a focus group, but I don't mean a focus group as such. I'm not a fan of focus groups. The best results we had when we brought 20, 30, 40 customers together in an interesting space. We found an art gallery. We found a restaurant with a great view. We even used a hotel ballroom in Chicago that had a beautiful view, that sort of thing. And you make these customers work together on different exercises and facilitated exercises, and they go on a bit of a journey together. And you're in the room. You and your team are in the room, and you're taking part. You're listening in as they interact together, as the customers interact together. And they ignore you very quickly after a while because they're intent on the task that you've given them. You learn a ton. It doesn't take a lot of money nor a lot of time. You just need to have people there, I think, who actually know how to do this process. And essentially what you're trying to do, of course, is view the world through their lens, the lens of your customers, trying to understand what they're seeking to do and what motivates them as human beings, and where your brand fits or the category fits in their sort of journey of life. And at Schwab, we did a number of sessions, like I said, all over the US. We found that a common thread between them was this drive to take control of their destiny, their family security and well-being. And they didn't tell us that, but we were able to glean that from the conversations that were taking place, the exercise they were doing. And it's fair to say that, any investing brand, it's a category benefit, right? That investing allows you to take control of your destiny. If you invest in the right way, you can do that. It's a category benefit. But because that idea was rooted in the DNA of Schwab, that's why Schwab existed, it felt much more authentic to us. And I think also nobody else sort of claimed that space. Sometimes people don't claim the obvious. And I think also we executed against it with, some confidence and empathy. Okay, let's move to phase two, because once you've found that overlap between your brand values and something that customers care about, you can build your positioning. And by the way, you might have choices about one or two different kind of human truths, as we did. You just have to try and play with which ones you think are going to work for you. But let's go to positioning itself. And I love the idea that McKenna Erickson shared with me years ago, that when you're positioning, you're really building a case. It's an argument, if you like, for why your brand. And importantly, in this middle section, number 2 here, this is where our brand accelerator approach, you can see, it's a little bit different from the standard positioning approach. The brand accelerator approach, it's based on asking a series of questions, fundamental questions from which you can build a differentiated brand story. So who we are for, who we're against, and so on, are questions that actually, they require some thought. And by doing so, it tends to bring depth and new thinking to the positioning process. One of the key elements here, for example, I think it's really important. It's about defining what are we against. And it's true that great brands, modern brands, you'd rather be everything to a few customers and therefore loyal customers rather than just something to many. And it's that principle that lies behind the success of Apple, Nike, and Virgin, other great challenger brands. And it's a principle that we followed. We at Schwab, we identified a target audience. They wanted to be everything to them, knowing that it would attract others into the set as well. It's a great way to set your brand apart from the rest, to be clear about what you stand for and what you stand against. And again, with Schwab, we were against what we called the broken system of traditional Wall Street with all its opacity and complexity and so on. And that provided a great jumping off point for ideas about how we could show people Schwab was different. Okay, bring it to life. That's the final critical phase, and this is where a positioning based on the human truth can be absolutely game-changing. Often, again, Tom talked about it. So I think marketers build their positioning. We build them based on product attributes or price or value. Sometimes because that's the way it's always been done, or sometimes that's as far as our thinking gets you. But the moment's truth is when you get to delivery, because you often run out of ideas for execution, because positioning based purely on product or price, it doesn't generally make for inspiring communications that cut through the noise. I know Tom talks about better saying this, which I think is a brilliant expression. We've all been guilty of it, I know. But if you link your brand to a human truth in the way that GE does and IBM or Schwab, I think you can inspire great storytelling, great human stories that engage so many more customers and employees. We'd regularly get 35 million investors and B2B people engaging with stories that we put on social media that weren't about Schwab at all. They were about real people and real ideas, all connected with only your tomorrow. And we'd sort of get reflected glory and business from that. It was incredibly effective. And also it allows you to, telling great human stories, allows you to weave in, product and service offerings in perhaps a much more interesting way. And it works. I know it sounds somewhat difficult, but that's what GE's eco-imagination was all about. I mean, I go back to Kevin Kline's original, there's a windmill in Norway that's producing energy. It's fantastic storytelling that transformed their business. IBM's Smarter Planet is a classic case of doing that, and Schwab's Own Your Tomorrow is similar, I think. So that's it. So I think finally I would say this process, the brand accelerator process, it works because it combines what's real and authentic about your brand with deep insights into what motivates decision making in a category. And again, I've got to emphasize, it doesn't require big budgets to bring this sort of human truth-based approach to life either. If you have a ton of dough, that's great, fantastic. But this is not about big advertisements. It's about telling great stories in all the many places you can tell today throughout the customer process. And the massive reduction in content production costs today mean that, again, for sort of thousands rather than hundreds of thousands, you can make compelling content and experiences deliver across multiple stages of the customer journey. So finally, I would say this stuff works. It's not incredibly hard to do. It's not expensive to do. You just got to know what you're doing, sort of thing. So I hope that was helpful. Mary, back to you, I think.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pete. So if this sounds interesting, we would love to offer a complimentary assessment of your positioning. And if you have any interest in learning more about the Brand Accelerator and how it might work in your organization, of course, we're available to talk to you about that. We're going to open this now up for questions.